Barry, 30 seconds to you.
20 seconds airtime, 20 seconds airtime. Find your marks. Well, good morning, folks. I'm Barry Klein. This is another meeting of the Houston Property Rights Association. We do this about 40 times a year in Houston, Texas. And we have presentations from speakers at our meetings. I want to let you know that we're having some success with the petition drive tactic that we're promoting to bring freedom back to America. As you know, 6 petition drives have been attempted this year in Texas. 2 have actually been completed. One has resulted in the goal of that organizing group to be effectuated. And there's 2 still unfinished, and 2 were not completed. However, we learn from every step. And of course, the ideal time to do a petition drive to amend the charter is around election time, because that gives you an opportunity to get lots of signatures from voters on election day. At this point, I think we'll see at least 2 more petition drives kicked off. In fact, one is already kicked off in Texas. In both cases is to amend the charters to ban red light cameras. I do think we'll see perhaps 2 more petition drives soon to be launched to bring term limits to 2 of the smaller Texas cities. So we're getting into the next opportunity to do this. We can do it in Texas. We can do this easily twice a year in the November election season and also in the spring election season, because most cities in Texas have their elections in May. So before we get into by the way, I have no handouts for you today. I've had a very busy week. As many of you know, I am compelled by market forces to move my residence. I have been a renter for about 25 years in the same location, and I've been an activist for 30 years. And all that's been crammed into a kind of a standard old-style Houston house. I'm now departing that location. Most of my goods are moving, most of my records are moving to not a warehouse, but a storage area behind a shopping center. And I will be moving to another location, not too far from where I currently live in the near north side. I've got a truck rented for tomorrow, and those who might have some spare time might want to come by and help me. I'll have it over at my place by 2 o'clock, and we'll do it again on Sunday. Hoping to get the heavy stuff out for the most part, and I'll be there in the next several days getting the last of my smaller stuff moved. So we're in a big transition point. This is actually quite helpful, I think, because it's forcing me to sort through, to some degree, a lifetime of material, and now I've got it on shelves that will help me get to it in a more organized fashion and decide what needs to stay and what can go. So, yes, we have a hand up. Yes, sir. What's Ed?
Please explain your opposition to Proposition 1.
Sure, be happy to. Proposition 1 is on the Texas ballot as a constitutional amendment. It's actually, in a way, a watershed moment in Texas politics. TxDOT is asking the voters to approve what could be this first year $1.7 billion every year in the future of a new revenue for the Texas Department of Highways, of Transportation. And this is actually only a portion, perhaps maybe 1/3 of what they think they really need, which is $5 billion a year to expand the road system. What I've done is I've put together an argument. I think most of you have already seen it. It's an article with links that shows that there is no traffic crisis in Houston or Texas. because people adjust how they use the road system. The average travel time, according to U.S. Census data, for a commuter is under half an hour in Houston and the rest of Texas and the country for the most part, with one or two exceptions. Because people don't like to tend to spend too much time in the work trip, and so they adjust their lives accordingly. And so, and other people are actually taking part in these adjustments, including employers. So employers in the downtown area will find it difficult to recruit people to a downtown job site, and they find it hard to keep them. Congestion is an irritation, downtown parking is costly. And so they leave downtown and move out to the suburbs. Downtown Houston now has only about 5% of the regional employment, and that I think is common throughout Texas and probably the country now, as jobs move out to get closer to the workforce. And as that's happening, and all this, of course, is occurring spontaneously without government coordinating it, as that's happening, retailers are trying to get closer to their potential customers so they don't lose them. And so they'll open up new locations closer to those emerging residential enclaves. So all these factors are taking place. Employers are moving, employees move closer to the work site or else they change jobs. And so the travel time stays under half an hour. It's 28 minutes in the Houston area. I think it's 22 minutes Texas-wide. This kind of information is not broadcast by the entities that are in charge of construction of new highway facilities or anybody else engaged in these policy debates, because oftentimes they have a conflict of interest. If you look at what the regional business groups get behind, it's oftentimes what their developer associate members want, which is more highways in the suburbs. And so we get a infusion of new money. You have a hand up over here. Yes, sir, Garth.
It's one thing to spend money on additional concrete. It's another thing. The road system is sorely needed of modernization, the signaling, new connections here and there. Minor stuff to make things flow more smoothly. What's wrong with spending money on that?
Nothing wrong with that, and that may be something that the public would decide to do. In fact, what's interesting is that some government agencies locally have actually been reducing the lanes on our streets, especially in the downtown area. If you notice some of that redevelopment where they've now put in old-fashioned parking, which we didn't used to have, that old slant-in parking, that's come back for part of downtown street system. They've actually reduced our lane mileage in that way, and our travel time stays under half an hour. Some cities have actually demolished parts of their freeway system. Dallas is looking at that right now, and they have not left that national pattern of travel time staying under half an hour. So this information needs to be part of the policy debates so the public does not feel stampeded into doing things such as TxDOT and its allies in the road building industry want, which is $1.7 billion of new revenue every year, with maybe trying to get it up to $5 billion a year, which is what they say their computer model needs. Now, let's talk about the computer model for a minute. The model is very self-serving if you're in the industry, because it does not reflect the fact that people do adjust how they use the road system. When congestion gets too intolerable for somebody, not everybody, because we have different levels of tolerance, when congestion gets intolerable, they will either quit the job and find one closer to where they work, or they will move closer to the job site. So that sort of thing is ongoing. The computer model does not acknowledge that. The people who are studying this problem with the modeling call that a feedback loop, which is missing from the model, which leads to deceptive answers, and that becomes part of what we read about and hear about from the politicians, from the media, and it entirely misrepresents the true dynamics of how traffic is functioning. So, I guess the point is Houston Property Rights Association is urging Texas to vote no on Proposition 1. We don't need that much new money going into transportation. They can always come back in another year with something more modest that reflects the need to do maintenance, maybe do some smaller tune-up in the system. But even if that doesn't, even if we don't get the tune-up, we still get, these dynamics are still at play, keeping the travel times tolerable. And before I leave this topic, I should also mention that people who study this on the international framework also find that there's an appetite to travel. People actually enjoy travel, maybe about an hour a day on average. If you think about it, when you leave the office or leave the home, if you work at home like I do, you might enjoy getting out on the road. And that's because we do enjoy movement around our territory. Something like a cat might do, or something like a wild animal might do. We all have a need to move about. Okay, let's move on to the main topic, unless I have a compelling announcement or comment. So let me talk about our speaker today. It's going to be, I think, quite interesting. One of our longtime members, going back to the early 90s, when we first organized successfully to stop the attempt to bring zoning to Houston. We're the largest city in the country without citywide zoning, and I met Michael Butler there. Michael, would you raise your hand? I met Michael at City Hall. There was a chamber full of people angry about the plan to bring in zoning. Not all, some were there to support it, but Michael was one of the angry people, and certainly it was a contained anger, but I was delighted to hear him at the microphone explaining what was wrong with the city's plan to bring in zoning. And as I heard Michael talk, I thought, this man's going to be happy to meet me because we've already got our plans put together to force this onto the ballot. And from that point on, Michael did work with us. I think you were part of our Speakers Bureau. And of course, in the end, in 1993, we were rewarded with success at the ballot box. Voters did reject zoning. And then 2 months later, I already turned in our signature to our petition to amend the charter. That was also passed by voters. And so we now have in the Houston charter a very high hurdle that protects us from citywide zoning. They have to, in the future, they have to actually write the ordinance, produce a map, give the public 6 months to debate it, and then hold an election. I think that's a hurdle that the pro-zoners will never attempt. That's worked to keep us free of citywide zoning. That's worked in Alvin, Texas, where they've done the same thing. It's worked in Rosenberg, Texas. And I hope it works in Richmond, Texas, where we recently did a petition drive. Okay, so let me bring up now Charles Sterling. Charles was brought to my attention by Michael, who had the bad luck to have a problem with his computer. Somebody violated the sanctity of his computer, and it was a very expensive proposition where Charles had to be brought in to solve his problem. So Charles and I have been working together on this presentation, which will deal with the things you need to do to protect yourself. And also, there's, of course, a property rights angle to this. Some of us had property rights in our intellectual property, and what you'll learn from Charles today will help you protect your rights to your property that you've got stored on your computer. So Charles has passed out a copy of the outline of his remarks today, and I've got a copy of his brochure for those who might want to get a copy before you leave. And let me give you something about Charles. He goes by Charlie, Charlie's background. Now, Charlie is a member of the CISSP, which he doesn't really tell us what that is. But he can tell us when he gets up here. He's a whole brain thinker. He looks beyond the immediate need and evaluates the impact of a change. His background is in electronics and computer technology since 1970, and he's done international travel since the late 70s. He holds this CISSP security certificate, which means he's a senior security consultant. He works for the groups such as InfraGard and the senior ISA member of the HTCIA, two groups that Charlie can tell us about. He's done consulting practice with the, oh my gosh, more of these acronyms, SFB/SOHO environments. He performs nonprofit technology support. Well, that's great. We're a nonprofit. Technical training, technology research for legal issues. His services include computer maintenance, C-level guidance. Who here needs C-level guidance? I think most of us do. Problem analysis and solution provider, and disaster recovery mitigation planning. He is a child care protection advocate. I give you Charlie Sterling. Charlie.
while we were gathering, there was various conversations going on, and some of those comments amongst the audience fit with what I'm going to try to accomplish today by sharing some information. And of what I'm going to try to do is identify some things where we can look at some things happening local in the area directly on our computers, and look at some things of how they apply even from a standpoint of overseas, and how we're now a society that's growing into one. We're a global community, and what happens someplace else can have an effect on us. So it's just a change in security from a standpoint that once upon a time we were worried about somebody physically coming into a facility. Now it's a matter that anybody can get in remotely.
That only goes to the TV.
Oh, oh. So the presentation will be made available to Barry afterwards. So that way all of the URLs, the information that will be described will be readily available to you. My contact information is on the little handout, so if there's something specific that you would like to ask about, feel free to ask about the meeting content, and I'll try to explain, if we miss a point of what we're talking about here today, to try to explain that point. I want to be sure that as we go through this process that it's aware that I'm an individual independent consultant, and I'm not a member.
Are you going to go into full screen mode with that?
Okay.
I'm an independent consultant and not a representative of any of the various security associations which I'm a member of, or of some three-lettered agency. So that could be complicated, how something might be repeated. So of the associations that I'm in, InfraGard is one group, which is a public-private sector relationship with the FBI. It's a partnership of how to share security information. Unclassified information will come to the InfraGard chapter. We'll share that with members. It is a restricted environment in that membership. There is a vetting process, but it's a InfraGard records check. It's not a background check as such. There's no fee to it. I'm a senior ISSA member, which to reach the senior membership, you have to be able to establish that you have 10 years of security background. So I've been around going overseas and things since the late 70s, early 80s. So there's been various problems in different countries that I've encountered. So that's kind of where my background festers with various information that I'll share. So a couple of topic points. This may be a little different presentation. It is a prototype presentation in that there will be other structured elements that will be built into it as I work on it some more. Some key topics, as I mentioned, is trying to tie local to global aspects of various things. A couple of topics in particular to talk about. You've probably seen at least advertising about Internet of Things. And there's some real security concerns with regards to technology changes. And I want to kind of point out how some of those things will fit into our everyday lives as well as into the business. So one of the things that I'll do is kind of bounce from some physical property to intellectual property. More will be intellectual as the environment that I work in and around the other associations. It's more intellectual property, computer related. Involves patents, websites, domain names, information that you would normally store in your business. And it's becoming more at risk now as downsizing started, decades ago. A lot of work started going home. And there's often the case less security in the home environment that there is in the office environment. So what's happening is a sort of a coincidence of action where a single user can oftentimes be the source where a Trojan is allowed onto a business network, and that single action is all that it takes to affect the entire company. So there are some specific points on that I'll point out in particular later. So doing something slightly candid, as I do go through my days, once upon a time, the caveman only had to worry about going and crossing the hill, conking the other guy on the head and dragging the goods back, and that was real estate. So whatever the physical possessions were all you had to worry about. Well, in the internet global community that we're in, of course, we're instantly connected all across the world. So those limitations are no longer as primary. They're still absolute concerns, but they're not the primary problems that we currently face. Right now, the technology has moved into the power grid and other things, and now we're, vastly worried about an attack that could be against the power grid. That goes down, it could affect the entire region. So we've had some of that exposure before, where the power grid has gone down and it's been backtracked to some problem at some small substation, and it take down half a dozen states. Well, that's the type of thing that we're staring at in these situations where these attacks can come in, and we won't generally know until potentially it's too late of what country they're coming out of necessarily, and for sure, it's going to take a lot more effort to figure out who actually instigates such an attack. In the business environment, used to be that business continuity and security were two separate groups, and they were maybe in different buildings, definitely on different budgets. One didn't talk to the other. So, now what's happening is because of the nature of the resources of where attacks can come in and how frequent and how they can actually walk in the door innocently from a staff member that brings something from home with them, hooks it up on their work computer or off of their smartphone. Then things are now blending together, so everybody's working more together and looking at avenues of being able to how to mitigate attacks and being able to recover and isolate these situations when they do come up. So it's made the awareness is kind of a key term to focus on, the awareness of how extensive the internet connection attacks are is very high. It's going to get worse. You know, I'm not even going to say it's going to get worse before it gets better, because all we can see right now, it's just going to keep getting worse, because it's going to keep changing. Every time we do something, the bad guys change what they do, and we have to change what we do. And that means software has to change, hardware has to change, policies and procedures and staff education has to change. So it's an ongoing thing that we're going to have to live with. So, you know, you probably heard some things like some people feel that they browse the net and they feel that where they browse, where they go, they're cautious and careful, and so they're being pretty safe. Well, there's no such thing as browsing the net and going to websites and being able to project from your perspective that you're being safe. So what a lot of people don't realize is that when that browser displays a website on the computer, there's a lot of code in the background that you don't see. And it's that code that you don't see which can be conducive to actuating a Trojan or connecting you to another server without your knowledge. And it's those actions that actually will get you into some sort of a malicious state. Some of the child protection things that I work with, you know, pedophiles are a problem, and a lot of people don't realize still yet that when you get a smartphone or a camera, it has GPS capability to it. So if you don't turn those functions off, something as simple as taking a picture of your house and posting it on social networking where it gets shared, can make that metadata, that information that is the detail that you, the human, don't see, available to somebody, and they can use that information to turn around and come up to your driveway. So it depends on what you're exposing as to what the risk is. So you know, you really need to become more aware and share this awareness with others around you, that the technology, just because it comes out and it's new and it's nifty and it's easy to use, it does not mean that it's secure. So there's some terminology. There's white hat and black hat is used oftentimes to try to isolate the difference of a hacker versus a cracker. So in general, a hacker is more the white hat individual who is a software engineer, potentially a pen tester. They will test your network to see if you're vulnerable to attack. And that could be an employee, could be a third party, but they're there to try to help you be safe. The cracker, the criminal hacker, is there to try to get anything they can from you. And we're finding that input from DHS or FBI is that they're saying hang on to computer logs for a decade. As we get different types of analysis to look at logs and more detail out of logs that come into newer generation firewalls, that we can go back and trace back and find information now better than we used to be able to. So at one point in time, you know, it was a lot of, you know, the log is 6 months old, throw this old information out because nothing crashed, nothing bad happened, we didn't see anything. And now there's a value to it, but you just don't know when you may have to actually use that material. So it falls into a forensic category, to why you need to keep that material. So it complicates the backup environment, something else to retain, something else to archive, and to put a retention policy together on. So many of us in this audience have probably had our identities stolen or some sort of an account problem. And one of the things that is a growing issue is the RFI theft issue. You can walk by somebody within a few feet of them and on your smartphone or computer have something running, and if you're not protecting your credit cards and driver's license, they can obtain the information off of your cards and then just keep on walking. You haven't been touched, you haven't been bothered, but they've got your information, and now they can go.
Are we using a smartphone?
It doesn't matter. The software to be able to obtain the information could be put on any wireless type device.
Shield that with copper or
These are like a 10-lined envelope. They have some material that's like a plastic. Whoops. See, this is just a shiny material. They have some that are a plastic, so you have like a credit card case. You unsnap, put your cards in, snap it back together, can carry it that way. So there's lots of different ways to be able to protect this information. There are liners that you can actually put in your billfold and just, and protect your entire contents that way. There are billfolds that you can buy that have it built into them. So there are things that you can do to try to keep your information from being had by others. And this is, this is a $3 solution to be able to ward off that type of an issue.
Are you saying that they can pick up my credit card information out of my wallet while it's in my pocket? They can walk by and get that information?
Yeah. I mean, if I were the bad guy and I had my laptop in my hand and I walked right down the aisle, I could just slowly walk past you and gather your information and you not know it.
See, another bad thing to do is to give a waitress your credit card so you can do something with it when she's not in your sight. She can make a copy of it.
Well, there's that risk when you hand somebody your card, and it's another point coming up, and I'll go ahead and do that point too, because a pet peeve for me is when around some child care things that I do, you go into a school or a facility, one of the things that they often do is say, give me your driver's license, I'm gonna make a copy of it for our records. Well, that's against the law. So they want to see it. They want to make note that your name and your phone number or something, your driver's license for their record and the time that you're on the facility, that's okay. But there are PCI considerations to where if they copy that information and store it, then they are then liable for that information. And the state of Texas also has some issues with you copying the Texas driver's license. So it's commonly done, lots of different places. You go buy a hamburger or something, well, not a hamburger, but you go to a grocery store, medical clinic, and they oftentimes will want to be able to have a copy of your driver's license and your credit card. And, pardon?
Car rental.
Car rental.
So are you talking about a photocopy or an electronic copy?
Either way, copy is copy. So most commonly they make a photocopy, a Xerox copy, and just staple that along with whatever other paperwork you have. The problem with that is simply that that's a piece of paper that goes into probably an unlocked file that any employee that can get into that area can go in and grab that information. So from that sense, that information is not being protected from that standpoint. So that's where there are certain people that I've talked to. I was in one of the phone companies the other day to do an upgrade on the phone, and the guy wanted it, and I refused. And the salesman got all weirded out, and so he goes and gets the manager. Manager comes over and said, yeah, he has the right to refuse. We have a form He goes and gets the form, he comes back, the manager and the salesman signed off to say, yes, this guy's name was in the store and actually did this transaction. He showed us his identity. We know it really was him that made this transaction. And so the sales group in that particular store didn't have the clue. The manager hadn't bothered sharing that information yet.
Is that common in businesses?
Yeah, it's real common, and I've had some CEOs come back at me on this type of conversation and say, well, we do it all the time. You know, we run this nonprofit barbecue on the weekends or whatever. And we gather that information and store it, and we send out thank you letters and all of this. And I'm going like, just because you do it wrong doesn't make it right. And so, you know, it's a subject that you have to be careful with, because if you're active in doing it and somebody actually gets a hold of that information, steals somebody's identity, then you're in the liability line for that person to turn around and do legal action back against you because you didn't properly obtain or handle that information.
What if they say we have measures that we can take to keep that information secure and order?
Yeah, well,
Repeat the question.
the taking measures, when a vendor says they want to be able to make a copy of your driver's license or something, you know, any of your PII, your publicly identifiable information that goes along to where a hacker can build their internal case to be able to steal your identity. They say they've taken steps, they've got antivirus. They probably are not going to tell you what steps they've done to make sure that something bad doesn't happen with the information that they have. You generally won't know. If it's a cloud service, you're sure going to be hard trying to prove what's going on there. But the problem is, without knowing for sure what is or is not done, then you just don't know. And when you get into a situation as where when something malicious has occurred and now you're trying to go back and get proof of who did what and what time and what order and what method, then you may end up in lawsuit city to be able to get that person to expose the information that you need in order for you to be able to either make your case or be able to figure out how you're going to fix the situation. So you just simply can't trust anybody that says they've got things in place. I mean, I'm not saying they're all bad, but it's not a good solid way to lock something up like that and know that it's going to stay protected. So one of the things that's not obvious is where you go on the websites. So we all browse somewhere for entertainment at some point in time. So if you went to a porn site, a news site, and a food site, which one of those do you think might be the most malicious site to go visit?
Porn site?
Well, probably not.
I vote for food.
Well, food is more likely going to be the most malicious because of the advertising. So the porn site guys want your money. They want you to come back. So they have actually been productive in being able to help the antivirus guys know where some problems are, help identify them, track down certain sources of information, not necessarily people. But when you look at any news site, if you go to, whatever your favorite news website is, there are advertisers that are trying to gather information. And I refer to it as stealing your browsing history because they didn't ask, they didn't announce that they were there in the first place. So they're trying to get that information so they can sell it and make money off of it that way, and they're trying to take and put it into a position to be able to send more spam to you, trying to get their advertisers paid and happy, so they're getting money in that direction, and you're the one losing on the back end because you're having to clean up all this mess and expose everything on your computer. So there are various types of steps that you can take to deal with that, and I'll show you some of that a little later. We'll browse a website and I'll show you a free add-in that I use that will help defend from some of that type of issue. So passwords. So everybody's bound to have heard, you know, update your password, change your password, and there's several different sites that you can go up and test your password. Well, you know, I've had clients call me and say, hey, my email's been hacked. So, okay, fine, give me, you know, text me. I know what your email address is, so I know where to go. Text me your password. And not to go into any descriptions of where this guy got educated, and he texted me back the word Aggies in lowercase letters. So, you know, when you're using a program like a brute force attack method, it's throwing, you know, incremental letters or alphanumerics or words at the login to try to work its way through. And it's a matter of a second, a couple of seconds, for them to go through down the most obvious word list and go try those first and see if they can get past your email. And if you've got one of those types of emails, or you've got passwords, or you've got one that you've been using the same password for 10 years, you really need to rethink not only changing it, but making it more secure. Because the easier that part is, the easier it is for the hackers to get in, get your information, steal your identity, and then however that blends into your business world, then affects whatever it has to do with your property. So it can affect you personally, and it can affect you business-wise. And since a lot of this activity goes on in foreign places like Florida and Russia, you know, we can reach out to Florida and try to go put somebody in jail. But there are areas of Russia in particular that they're broke. Their revenue stream comes from what's viewed as being a hacker. If they can steal your credit card information and go sell it and generate money, then that's their business and it's accepted by local government. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. So this issue, the internet connectivity issue, is that we're merging societies together. And what works in one doesn't necessarily work in the other, but from second to second, we may be crossing that border and intertwining together.
About passwords, someone just set up something on my computer, and it has a master password, and then it has a list of the things you go into. And when you want to go to a certain place, like a bank, you just click that particular one,
right,
and they put in they change the password. What they send is a different password every time they go into a place, so that no one ever sees your real master password.
Yeah, there are a number of tools to use. One of the tools, besides controlling what the password is and updating it constantly, the enterprise guys, they're really into that type of change it frequently mentality. Some of them are getting updates to a little dongle every 5 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever it's set to. And so their 32-character password, whatever it is, it's different every time they turn around. So they've got to use that device to feed it in. I use my situation a little different in that I have a lot of passwords to keep track of. So I have a program, it's a commercial program called 1Password, and I purchased that inexpensive program, and it stores the password information, and I can store other information, you know, about the company or attach instructional files and stuff to it. And so in that sense, I'm remembering 1Password, but I have the resources of many that's securely held within that. So, you know, you have to look at what your need is. You know, if you're primarily on if you're logging into websites as what you're primarily trying to keep track of, you would probably use a different program from potentially 1Password. Trying to think of the name of the other that I have used, but some are styled to do one type of thing or another. So that's part of trying to determine what's best for you, is understand what you're doing and what the nature of the information is that you need to store. And then that way you can pick the proper program and use it. So this is a little of what we've just kind of covered. The more home office activity that there is, the greater the problem. So if you look at one of the great big 3-lettered insurance companies, they spent, I don't know, 25 million bucks or some big fat number like that, because they had one agent overseas using his company laptop while he was on vacation one week, and he was going everywhere on the company laptop. Got it infected. Come the next Monday morning or Tuesday, whatever, he logs back into the company network. The Trojans transferred up. The security department is saying, we need to elevate our endpoint security from where it is to a higher level. Management didn't want to spend those millions of dollars. So they were hit, and it took the network down. And the key point of this is that one person is all it took to take the whole network down. So another company had something similar, and this came through a phishing email. So an phishing email is intended to attract you, to get you to sucker you into clicking on the URL. So if you click on it, it starts a handshake back and forth with wherever the other server is, transfers the Trojan or does whatever, deleting or compressing your data, whatever it's going to do. So you have to try to educate employees, you know, to be careful. And one of the things that I do is the best way that I know of to try to educate some employees, get them to talk about what happens, because they're going to get caught and they'll talk amongst themselves, and the likelihood of them coming and telling anybody as far as management is pretty low. But the fact that they start talking and amongst themselves is the value in this process. So I'll create, with the CEO's approval, a phishing email, and I'll look through the spam in somebody's inbox, get some idea of what they would probably be interested in clicking on, and then issue that email. Go create a bogus email account, send it out, and fix all the URLs, the images, everything to do nothing but point back to that company's home page at their website. And so when they go and click on it and it pops up their company website, then they have a pretty good idea that they have been tricked and have gone, you know, into some sort of internal, you know, phishing process. So it's a easy way to do things. It doesn't help you track it to know who did or how many times it was. Some of the bigger companies actually will do a campaign, and they'll track who, how many times, how long they spent on the page, what time of the day it was, all of these factors to be able to get an idea of what the risk is of malware coming through. Last year, about the middle of the year, was talking to a new CSO at a local oil company. And they were to the point with all of these phishing email type issues that they were ready to turn around and just convert all of the mail that came in to text and then stop all of that active material from coming through. And so, unfortunately, it would have caused so many problems with various levels of international communications. They decided that it would create more problems. It would fix those malicious problems, but it would create a different set of problems that they weren't ready to be able to take on. So they increased their phishing campaign and other things to try to educate the staff on things. So, as I mentioned a while ago, it's a brute force method on password hacking. So they'll just sit there and pound away trying to figure it out. And some of these hackers, if they're going after some place that they at least think has got a million, email addresses or other material of value, patents or what have you, that they want to be able to spend time trying to get, they don't care if it takes all year for the program to sit there and run and bang away on it and come back or, hit it a few times and go back and come back at it 8 hours later or the next day or something and keep working on it all through the year. They've got time to do that. And all they've got to do is get it right once to be able to get in and get your information. So our dictionary tags, which use words. So I was in a meeting yesterday, and one of the things they pointed out was the most used password right now is 12345. And so you can count on when they do a dictionary attack or brute force style attack, and they're taking those initial pot shots, the word Aggies, password 12345, ABCD, those are going to be the things that go in there first. And you'd be shocked to see how many times, if you were to get in a group and get people to tell you what their password was, that how close to some of those things that there are in use by people that you're around. Best thing to do, this bottom line here is describes using a passphrase. So a passphrase in one description is a rhyme, something that you can remember, and it's like use the first letter of each word of that rhyme so that you can repeat it in your mind, but then when you look at it, it looks like gobbledygook. So the one they used in this example is to be or not to be. That is the question. So it's got those numbers and letters arranged in there in that order based on those first characters. And so it doesn't look like it means anything, but you can recite the rhyme and be able to use that password. And that type of a password is very secure as compared to trying to modify your name or use your old dog's name and put that with an old birth date or something like that.
All numbers, no other characters.
The more alphanumeric it is, the more blend of upper, lowercase, and numbers and characters. And the most complex is 404, where you also have special characters. So uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. If you involve all of those in some way into whether it is just literally a password or a passphrase, it's going to be the most secure for you to use. And the less that it looks like your name or your company name or something where somebody can look at it and say, oh, I know that's Fred's because it's, you know, it's got his nickname in it. You know, the less this identifiable back to you, the better off you are from a hacker trying to figure it out.
There's a lot of talk about passwords, but I'm just curious, is there any security in the way you set up usernames? A lot of usernames are set for you like your email address.
Yeah, well, the usernames is just as important an issue as the password. So too often is the case, we grab a computer out of the box, we go to set it up, and the first username is going to be owner or administrator or whatever the factory set up, the default. You want to change that. Okay, when it comes up, what's the username you're going to use? Well, use, you know, 17 asterisk pound sign as the username, and then put a complex password in it. Then when the hacker gets into your machine, they're sitting there looking, they're not seeing things like administrator, they're seeing gobbledygook that's over here, and I got to figure out what gobbledygook means. So they got to hack in there, and they don't know if they're getting into the financial or patent section or if it has to do with cleaning supplies. You know, so the more confused you can make it, the better. But you have to keep in mind that however you do that, you need to have your own rhythm of being able to remember that. So that's where I always try to push the point of the passphrase. You know, make your rhyme and use that as your method to be able to create this information, and it'll be the best secure process for you. Okay, so this URL is actually a blog URL up at Kaspersky. They are a Russian position antivirus group. Good program, you know, probably great guy. Forrest can tell anything that I would have to know about him. You know, he's very up and up as far as being concerned about security and has a good product. This particular article, which is going to be in this long list of URLs that's part of the presentation, it describes some of the 10 worst things to use. And at the time, I think of this one, they were talking about an Adobe attack and all of those passwords, usernames, things that got stolen from Adobe. So, you know, it doesn't matter what the vendor is, the timing of it, you know, password type information is critical, and you need to change it frequently. So, you know, people who have not changed them for years, I at least try to get them to change it on an annual basis, get into that mode where you change it periodically. But the more frequent you make adjustments, the better off you're going to be.
But also, when you do that, the more likely you are to forget what it is.
As a number of things through this, there is the double-edged sword issue. So that's where you're, you know, doing the rhyme, or, you know, having a source at home where you can keep this information where it's readily available for you or you know, your spouse or whatever to have access to when you have to get a hold of it. But you don't want to make it easy on the hackers.
Cheryl, many of us have gone into a site, say, to get a newspaper article, and had to create a username and password. I haven't touched it in 5 years. Do I need to go back on all these old ones and change it? I might access it in a year from now. But I still have that written down in my little book.
Yeah. So
do I need to bother with all those?
Well, okay. So it depends. The answer is primarily yes, but it depends on what information you left as to how critical that situation is going to be. So like you, I've got some accounts that I'll go in and I'll need to do something once a year with, and I'll go in and set that account up, and I'll use a email address that I know I'm going to toast in a year or two because it's going to get sold and get a bunch of spam on it, then I'm just going to dump it. All right. So if it's something that you do need to go back to it periodically, make an adjustment to it. Changing the password on it is a good idea. I mean, if you go in annually, you only access it once like that, at least change the password on it. Keep it fresh in your notes, at least, that you've gotten into it. You know how to access it. That way you also know how to get into it to terminate it if you need to do so. If you get into an account like this, and let's say it's for a newsletter, okay, I got a bunch of that kind of stuff coming at me. Well, they really don't need your real name. They don't need your address. They need some sort of an email address. They sure don't need your phone number. But if you just type something in the format that the web page is looking for, if you're going to do a one-time download of a article that you want to read, I'll just put stuff in there. Give me my file, and I could care less about that source again if it's a one-time deal. So, you know, if you're going to the bank, you need to put the proper information in there. But if it's something that is a casual, not important deal, the web pages are after format of information. They're not checking to make sure that you are really you when you put that information in there. And the more of that information you leave in more places, once the hacker gets into one place and they find another, then they're making their case by looping through all of the places that they can find through your information to be able to steal your identity. So, you know, it's a matter of don't help where you can possibly keep from helping. So this was a group that I ran across when I was doing some of the searching for information. The International Property Rights Index. Well, I didn't take the time to figure out the who, what, when about that. What I thought was interesting was the 1, 2, 3 there of what they were about. Legal and political environment, physical property rights, and intellectual property rights. Well, that's a global view of what they're interested in. What I did below it here is kind of twist that into a local business description, which is compliance, policy and procedure, physical security and authentication, and intellectual property rights. So what we're worried about right here is a little different than what the global scale is, because on that global scale, it's more of a countrywide problem as opposed to a company-wide issue that we'd be looking at, you know, right here directly amongst ourselves. So that was all that caught my eye there. That others are. Or there's a lot of connectivity, similarity as you move around in different groups. If you take the compliances, HIPAA, PCI, FERPA, if you make an outline of the 6 or 8 darts that this is what these things do, put them side by side, maneuver them around a little bit to put the common threads at the top, put the rest at the bottom. Well, you're going to find that the basic structure of all these compliance things are all pretty close to the same. We're worried about protecting the data, keeping things safe, and the rest of the stuff at the bottom is unique to what that individual thing is, whether it's, you know, kids' information, or if it's other that would be more corporate related or PCI compliance. One of the problems with trying to work in this global environment is the fact that it's just that. When things are working well, you're buying and selling and moving product from wherever. You get into a malicious situation, now you've got somebody in a foreign country that you're trying to deal with, and the rules that we abide by are not the rules that they abide by. And that's different from, me and you, and it's different from court to court. So it's a learning curve when you go through that process to figure out what you're up against and what you can do about it, because that gets into a matter of how much time, effort, and expense, and what's the value of what you're doing. And you have to look at those each time separately to figure out what that process is. Because you could have two different issues going on with the same country. And one of them has a greater effect on your business, so it's worth more of effort and expense to deal with that situation than that second item. That second item might be easy enough where I can make some sort of an adjustment and get around that and go on and move on down the road without worrying about it too much. But then in either case, you want to change your defenses. So it's a learning curve. The more you do ahead of time, the better off you're going to be. This particular couple of articles right here, local grew to size the issue, local grew to global. And this fits right in that category. That's why I grabbed these two particular articles, because they work exactly with that. Issues here, issues there, and how they're connected, and what kind of effort you have to get into.
Charlie, would you go back over that again? I didn't quite catch what you're driving at.
So, if you're doing business, let's say you're in a manufacturing business, and you're ordering parts from overseas, or a part from overseas, and you put your business together and you sell your product, and it may be sold all over the planet. Problem, if somebody gets into your machine, gets your patent or your process information, it could be these guys over here that's selling you that one part because they want to get your information so that they can go into business and compete with you. Or it could be somebody else that's just out fishing, trying to find information, and they don't know enough about you right now. They're just trying to steal anything they can get their hands on. So when you're attacked, it may not be apparent which side of the fence you're attacked from, and you don't know initially from where it's going to be, coming from. When you do some simple network investigation, when you're checking on a website or some hit that came to your site, it'll be easy to disguise it because the last spot that they were at, they came through, is going to be the first spot that you see. And so that country could just as be as innocent as you are, and they're bouncing around to multiple different countries in order to get to you so that they can hide their trail. So the legal aspect of trying to do something can be quite complex. If you end up with a situation where you can go one or two hops and you've got the guy where you can go point the finger at him, you're in a lot better case to be able to, do something. So we do things like complain about intellectual property disappearing. One of the things that came up was the fact that China got a hold of the patent on the new Chevy Corvette engine. And it wasn't much time difference, and I think a little after that, like the next year or something, that Chevy sets up a dealership a factory deal over in China to sell the Corvette. So they're making it available, but the engine's patent is sitting over there already. So it's almost like, well, you know, what's the fuss about in this case? Well, it's still a loss of a patent, and potentially the resource that can be tapped is not your business. It could be your lawyer's office. So patent attorneys are a high hit point of contact for hackers, because they know there's going to be patents there. There may be manufacturing, you know, processes, chemical processes, anything that will make money, bleeding edge, cutting edge business is going to be sitting there. So you can sort of kind of figure, if you're running an attorney firm, good chance that you've been hit and you don't realize it yet. So you want to try to take extra steps, the more value that you have. One of the problems, I've talked with a few attorneys where they felt, well, you know, it's not our information, it belongs to our client. And I'm going like, yeah, but you're the one retaining that information for your client. So you're responsible for it. So if you're using weak passwords, just to make it easy point, you know, then you're making it easy for this data to be lost. So you're increasing your liability point by not doing what you best well can to protect that data. So, you know, attorneys are going, well, we'll just sue, you know, and so that's sort of their answer to a lot of things. So some of them take it very serious. I've talked to some of the security guys and certain law offices, and, you know, the next step of what they would be doing is putting in man cages and making you go through one person at a time and x-raying you to be able to let you get into where that type of material is at. So some of them take it very serious and some not so much. You'll see numbers. I'm not quoting statistics, because you'll see numbers. You know, some report will come out and they'll say that the intellectual property loss is something in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And a week later, somebody else will come out and be referenced as saying it's $1 trillion. And somebody else will come out and they'll contest one number and they'll go back and forth. So the point of this reference is that once something of that nature is stolen, it's not just the value, say, of the patent. It's the loss of all the revenue and benefits that employees and the company in a manufacturing environment have lost now, because now they're already undercut because that product is on the street from a third party. It's their future revenue, their growth, their future R&D. All of those things are affected because of that one attack and the loss of that information. So it's not just the value of the dirt, if you will, you know, of when something gets stolen. It's the grass and the trees and the flowers and everything around it that are affected as well. This one report on the bottom is from Homeland Security. In 2011, they made almost 25,000 intellectual property rights seizures. Value in that case for those was $178 million. So there's lots of different numbers from different groups that will relate to specific topics and specific amounts. So it's hard to tell really what the real value of what we've lost is. I know one person that's touting that we're about to be hitting the $5 trillion number. And I haven't seen numbers to solidify that, but you know, I think we're definitely in the $1 trillion mark as far as what the real effect is. So this touches on a business domain loss. So just like losing a patent, you can lose your domain through an ISP. And all these EULAs that we have to check off on, you open up a piece of software, as soon as you open the package, you've accepted all the terms and you either use it or don't open it. And these things are quite extensive, and they're usually very one-sided toward the provider, whoever that entity is. And it can be very difficult sometimes to be able to unravel some of these situations. Some of them, you know, if you're selling candy and it's a hobby and all you want to do is just change the name and keep on going, then it's real easy just to go spend the $10 to get another domain, keep on going. So you have to look at the situation there and evaluate what it is you're trying to do or what you're trying to protect. But the process of losing that information is relatively the same whether you're a mom and pop shop or, you know, a big oil company, because once they focus on you and start attacking you, they're going to come in at your account login, and they're going to, you know, work on that end of it, and they're going to look at your website, and they're going to try to figure out all they can about you to be able to try to figure out what to do to how to get into your account. Now, back in the late 90s, we were doing web development. And one of the things we used to do back in that time frame was you need to get your name out there. Put all your information on your website. Make yourself known. Now we're going, no. You know, put some information up there. Put your product information. Put an indirect contact means up there. But, you know, don't put that you stay in your summer home over here, you know, for 3 months out of the year, and put pictures up there that have GPS information on them that you didn't turn off on your camera, because all you're doing is making it known where your assets are. So it's a changing world. There's some new threats coming at us. Spending a lot of time in the InfraGard, we're constantly getting new reports of issues. It's all the same type of information that you hear on TV. It's all unclassified, but it's just getting worse, and everybody needs to get a little more involved in the sharing of information and what they can do.
I've gotten the impression over the last couple of years that one of the largest violators of people's information is the government. And with all that they require, what can we do about that? But beyond shooting them.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, Snowden's the double-edged sword, right? You know, what healthcare is an example of something that I'm working with right now. You know, you've got your information in 6 different places, and you need the doctors to share that information. Now there's a bunch of walls put up, so they're sort of not moving, but then the government's got their ties into it. And then, you know, you go to the store and try to buy some 22 shells so you can go out, you know, dove hunting or frog shooting, you know, and it's like you got to sign your life away to get more than 2 little boxes of 22 shells. So there's not much that we can do to stop that process. I mean, that is a political problem. The thing to do is keep track of where you have information, and frequently stay logged, not frequently, but frequently enough, stay logged in so you can make sure that your information is not getting changed on you. Because one thing that a hacker can do, if it gets into your account and changes your email address, then when some information from that entity is sent out, it goes to them and not to you. And so they can act on your behalf, and you'll never know it until it's too late.
I had a phone call from, I would assume that it was an Indian phone bank of some kind saying, we're from Microsoft. We want to, we're getting some problems off one of your computers.
Yeah.
We need you to help us. I asked which computer, and they go, just go turn on your personal home computer. I've got 17 machines here. What, which one do you want me to turn on? You did?
Exactly the same.
Okay. I was assuming that it was a rather massive operation.
Yes.
But when they call up and they say, we're from Microsoft and we're here to help you, does not compute.
You're right. Hold that thought.
I actually read a article of a gentleman who does tech writing who received a call, and he followed the instructions. Well, basically went and wrote down all of them because he doesn't actually have a Microsoft computer. He has a Mac. And he just went like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go along with everything they said. Went through all their stuff, and basically they want you to sign over to where they can remotely access your computer.
I think it'd be something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the Microsoft I'm calling to help you fix your computer problem is a total scam. FBI has a alert out on that process. Some of y'all, me, my mother, some friends, we've all received it. And in one of our InfraGard meetings, we were talking about it, and I brought that up, and our liaison asked, well, what did you do? And says, well, they called 3 times. The first time, I just hung up. Second time I called, I just kind of, hem-hawed around a little bit, stalled a little bit, and after a little bit, just finally hung up. Third time they called, says, look, FBI is monitoring this call. I've already got your IP address traced, so, I don't care if you stay on the line or not. You're being watched. And they hung up. So,
It was that first line, we're from Microsoft, and we're here to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several variations of that, and the key thing to do.
Emergency stop.
Yeah, great big stop sign indeed. A key thing to do on anything like that comes up is report it so that it can go into a regional activity log, and then it get disseminated to whatever law enforcement groups that it actually needs to go to.
That was my question.
So there's a website, www.ic3.gov. It's a FBI based site. It's going to be in the presentation. And there's a long form. The cut and paste windows that you have may not fit exactly your description, so use the text boxes to take as much information, put a description in, paste in all that you can, all the detail that you can, and then that will go back. They'll figure out what it means and how to be able to do something with it. But if you don't report it somewhere, then it's just going to go unnoticed, and the feds won't know how frequent it is, and without knowing the frequency, then they're not going to get the agent time to be able to go spend time looking into it and trying to do something about it.
I asked, where are you calling from? California?
Yeah. Yes.
I was told that my Macintosh was running slow, and the man tested and found 19 Trojan viruses on it. I used to use I used to use Windows before I used a Macintosh many years ago, and he said that that Trojan viruses cannot work on Macintoshes. And is that correct? And does a Macintosh computer need to have an antivirus program on it?
So, quick question, and I want to make one more reference. Macs are not as prone as Windows are because Windows has been under attack for a longer period of time. But yes, a Linux environment, which Mac is, does have attacks against it, malware that attacks it. So there is antivirus programs and firewalls for the Linux environment as well. It's not a big selection like there is on Windows, but there is product out there. Now, the key reference I want to make real quick here is from a phishing standpoint, the most dangerous thing that's out right now is ransomware. And what this new version of this ransomware, they're going to hold you up for money, because once they get on your computer, they'll encrypt your files, all your work, if not all of your files on your computer. Now it's in a position that it can spread across your network. You do it on every external USB drive, disk drive, anywhere on your machine. They'll give you a pop-up window that says pay us money. And if you pay them money, they'll give you the decrypt code. If you pay the money, you might get the decrypt code before the FBI turns around and shuts that website down. So, yes, yes. Mary?
Yeah, we got another minute and a half. Garth.
I lost it.
Here you go, Mary. You lost it, okay. Any other questions?
In the back.
Alan, in the back. Hold on.
Is it particularly dangerous to continue using Windows XP these days?
Yeah, there are problems. I still have some clients that have XP in use, but where I don't have a problem is when they're a specific group working in a room and they are not connected to the internet. If they're running a local environment and it's all hand entered, I don't care. That part doesn't matter. If you're on the net, you should change.
I've got the impression that an awful lot of independent machines, like the ones at cash registers, were based on Windows XP.
Yes.
And I can't decide whether Microsoft was saying we're just leaving because we want to replace 30% of the computers with new ones, or there was something coming down the pike that they saw coming and they wanted to get out of the way.
Now, the deal is on all its equipment, smartphones, typewriters, microwaves, all that uses some variation of the Linux operating system because it's small and free as opposed to a Windows environment.
Any other compelling questions? Last one from Steve.
Would you have a suggestion or recommendation that you'd be comfortable with regarding anti-spam such as Norton or secure backup such as Seagate?
Okay, I use one product as far as antivirus and firewall combination software to put on Windows machines. And that product's called Viper from a company called Sophos. And it's commercially available, anybody can buy it.
Okay, I think we're done. Charlie, that was a great presentation. I thought it was great. And the best thing about this whole arrangement, you can actually got to see it on YouTube because Houston Media Source has a YouTube channel. Thank you very much. We'll see you next Friday.
You're going to give Barry the hard copy?
Yeah. Barry, what is next Friday?
Huh?
Next Friday.
You know, I don't recall. Can anybody recall what we have scheduled for next Friday? Steve may know.
I have to go check.
Okay. But we got somebody. We're always have a great speaker. You know that.
I want to show y'all this image real quick. The Internet of Things is a situation where products, your trash can, your doorknob, everything is going to have a wireless connection on it. And this is actually a medical camera pill that I have come to know recent. The thing about this is that little 1.1/8 long capsule has a wireless connection, a battery that'll run for an hour taking 55,000 pictures. So that type of thing with a microphone on it could be easily dropped in a plant box or anywhere in somebody's office, and you could sit outside in the parking lot and collect that information.
You know where all those wires
like
go?
washing machine, say, or refrigerator?
The smart appliances.
Yeah.
You ever get the wires?
So it's the same issue as like a smartphone. They're a Linux environment, and they have wireless connectivity to them. They can be hacked just as any Windows environment could be. They could be used for ill purposes just as much as proper